What if the person you trust most reveals a truth that shatters your entire world? She sat opposite me in the hushed intimacy of the velvet vine, her fingers meticulously shredding a linen coaster. A fresh glass of Merlot, still untouched, gleamed beside her. There wasn't a trace of agitation in her posture, no tremor in her voice as she articulated the unthinkable. I require a night with someone else. It wasn't a hesitant query, nor a plea for a difficult discussion. It was a declaration, delivered with the calm of someone ordering a second course. My mind, grasping for an explanation, played a trick on me. I leaned in, a desperate, foolish smile on my face. "Forgive me, what did you say?" She repeated it, her tone softer, as if gentle words could dull the razor-sharp edge of her request. I scanned the room. No one else seemed to notice. The sommelier had retreated, and other couples were lost in their own tender conversations. We too were cocooned, but our fragile bubble had just violently imploded. "Is this some kind of macabre jest?" I managed, though a cold dread told me she was entirely serious. Her eyes, usually so expressive, held no hint of amusement. They were fixed on me, anticipating my reaction, as if she'd meticulously rehearsed her defense, planning to frame her desire as some form of enlightened self-discovery. "I've known no one but you," she explained, swirling her wineglass with an air of sophisticated detachment, as if we were debating vacation destinations rather than the fate of our shared life. "We united so early. I simply need to broaden my horizons." Then her gaze met mine, and she uttered words that tightened an invisible noose around my throat. "My affection for you remains. That hasn't shifted. I just refuse to live with the unanswered question." It felt as though I was caught in a film where the soundtrack abruptly dies before the climactic scene. Her lips continued to move, but her words dissolved into a muffled hum. The soft clinking of cutlery, the low murmur of voices, the smooth jazz filtering through the speakers, all faded into a deafening silence within my ears. And in that profound quiet, a stark realization dawned. She wasn't genuinely concerned with the devastation she was inflicting upon me. Her focus was solely on her own experience, her own curiosity, her own unfolding narrative. I didn't overturn the table. I didn't storm out in a rage. I didn't shed a single tear. I simply leaned back, clasped my hands, and waited for the sommelier to reappear so I could request another drink. The wine before me now tasted like bitter ash. After an eternity, I looked her square in the eye and informed her that I had two responses, two distinct paths, and whichever she chose, there would be no retraction. She didn't flinch. No shock, no remorse, no shame. Just that same calculating, composed expression, as if she were contemplating an item on a menu. I let the oppressive weight of her demand hang in the air for a long moment, like a slow-burning fuse. "You desire a night with another man?" I finally said, leaning in slightly. "Very well, you shall have it." Her eyes flickered, but only for an instant. She then recoiled, a flicker of caution in her gaze. I could sense her uncertainty. Was I serious, or was this a trap? That uncertainty fortified me. "However," I continued, "here's the stipulation. You have precisely two options." She nodded slowly. "This changed my life in 30 days. Ready for the shocking truth?" I raised one finger. "First choice, you proceed with your experience. But upon your return, I will be absent. No dramatic scene, no shouting match. I will simply be gone. Your messages will go unanswered. There will be no battle over assets. I will vanish. You will awaken one morning to discover that your fleeting curiosity came at the ultimate cost of your marriage." Then I raised a second finger. "Second choice, you abandon this notion entirely. No evasions, no prolonged deliberations. Instead, you agreed to confront me and a therapist, explaining precisely how you arrived at this precipice. I will listen, uninterrupted, but your honesty must be absolute, unflinching." A chilling silence descended, and it was then that I understood. She believed I was bluffing. She saw this as emotional manipulation, a desperate tactic to coerce her into backing down. The faint, knowing twitch at the corner of her lips betrayed her conviction that she held the true power in this moment, that this entire dinner was hers to orchestrate. "I will reflect on it," she eventually said, taking a sip of her wine. I nodded, feigning indifference. But inside, I was disintegrating. Each passing second across from her felt like a betrayal I was forced to witness in agonizing slow motion. I settled the bill in silence. She offered to drive, but I declined. I couldn't bear to be confined in the same space, to even breathe the same air. Arriving home, I packed a small bag, just essentials: clothes, my tablet, a toothbrush. I wasn't leaving yet, but I needed to be prepared. Our terrier Jasper watched me from the hallway, his tail lowered, sensing the disquiet. I couldn't bring myself to pet him. It felt like a betrayal to him, too. That night she made no attempt to converse. She slept soundly, her back turned to me, as if she hadn't detonated a live grenade in the middle of our life over appetizers. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind painting scenarios of Cassian. Did he know she was married? Did he perceive himself as her grand escape? Or what if the real secret was far more sinister? The next morning, she cheerfully prepared crepes as if nothing had transpired. I couldn't touch them. "I'm off to my Pilates class," she announced. I offered no reply. She departed without a backward glance. The moment the door clicked shut, I opened her tablet. I knew it was a violation, but I had to know. I needed to see the face of the man my wife deemed worthy of shattering our sacred vows. What I unearthed sent a jolt of icy terror through my veins. And it wasn't solely about Cassian. It was about her calculated plans after that intended night with him. Her inbox lay wide open. No password, no security, as if she never conceived I would look. Perhaps that was the most profound insult. Not the infidelity itself, but her absolute certainty that I would never delve deep enough to expose her. I clicked into her messages and typed Cassian. It didn't take long. His name was saved with a tiny flame emoji. Disgusting. The initial exchanges were light, almost innocuous. "Fantastic seeing you today. You absolutely nailed that new pose." But their tone shifted rapidly. By the second week, she was confiding in him how constrained she felt within our marriage. That word, constrained, burned with a hotter intensity than any curse word could. She depicted me as a comfortable old blanket she had simply outgrown. "Darian's sweet, but he just doesn't understand me anymore," she'd written. "He wouldn't grasp how desperately I need this. Just one untamed night to reclaim my vitality." I scrolled, my jaw clenched. Then it materialized, her meticulous plan. A message to Cassian, dated 2 days prior. Wednesday. "I'll tell him I'm out with girlfriends. Can't wait to see you. Don't be late." She had already made her decision before she ever sat across from me in that wine bar, before she delivered that manipulative soliloquy about honesty. She never intended to choose between my two options. She was merely buying time, playing the role of the innocent wife while meticulously paving her path straight into another man's bed. I wanted to hurl the tablet against the wall. I longed to awaken her from her Pilates-induced reverie and scream, "You already made your choice." But I didn't. I simply sat there, reading, staring, allowing the venom to seep under my skin until I felt physically nauseated. And then I discovered the ultimate betrayal. Buried within the chat log was a voice message, a mere 15 seconds. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the play button as if it might detonate. Then I clicked. It was her voice, soft and low, like a clandestine whisper meant only for him. "If he uncovers it, I'll spin it. I always do. Darian never asserts himself. I could shed tears for 10 seconds, and he'd be apologizing." I stopped the message mid-sentence. I didn't need to hear the rest. That was her perception of me, a doormat, a man so bland, so effortlessly manipulated, I could be emotionally steamrolled and still crawl back. And the most agonizing part? She wasn't entirely wrong. I had let so much slide. I had consistently turned the other cheek when she subtly belittled me in front of her friends or dismissed my feelings with a dismissive laugh. But this was different. This wasn't something to silently endure and then forget. This was the auditory evidence of my own wife turning me into a punchline behind my back. That night I didn't speak to her. I didn't even look her way. She arrived home, radiating cheerfulness, kissed my cheek as if we weren't teetering on the brink of absolute destruction, and asked if I fancied Thai for dinner. I just nodded numbly, my stomach churning with every lie she fed me. While she was in the shower, I printed every single line of the chat log, every emoji-laced insult. I highlighted the precise sentence where she declared I wouldn't stand up for myself. Then at the bottom, in bold marker, I scrawled 5 words. Watch me. That Wednesday night, I slipped the printout beneath her pillow. I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I planned. She had her clandestine night scheduled. So did I. And she had no conceivable idea who would be awaiting her at that hotel room when she walked in. Wednesday arrived like an inescapable storm. I called out sick from work, not from emotional collapse. I had indulged in enough of that in solitude, but because I needed every precious second to prepare. Desiree likely imagined I'd be home, perhaps binge-watching old comedies and eating leftover takeout while she slipped into another man's embrace for her one wild night. But that version of me, the meek, spineless husband, was gone. Or perhaps he had simply, finally awakened. I began by confirming the hotel. The name was explicit in the chat, buried in a message she was certain I'd never see. Secured the suite at the Sterling Grand, room 307. I'll bring the vintage. You bring your enchanting self. That message alone made my skin crawl, but I saved it. I craved the reminder, the motivation. Pain has a unique way of sharpening focus, and I was excruciatingly focused. I drove to the Sterling Grand just after noon and requested a room directly across the hall from 307. The desk clerk asked no questions. I paid in crisp bills and checked in with nothing but a leather messenger bag containing 2 items, the printed chat log and a small digital voice recorder. I wasn't seeking vengeance. I craved clarity. I demanded the truth, and above all, I wanted her to hear herself, not from my lips, but from her own, unfiltered, undeniable. At precisely 5:42 p.m., I observed her pulling into the parking lot from behind the tinted window of my room. She appeared agitated, draped in that striking crimson coat she reserved for drawing attention. Her phone was clutched in her hand. I could easily picture the message she was typing. Something like, "Traffic was a nightmare. Just arrived," probably accompanied by another flirtatious emoji. I allowed 10 minutes to pass before stepping out. I tapped once on the door of 307. No response. Then again, louder. I heard a scuffle inside, a hesitant pause. Then the door creaked open. She stood there, her face devoid of color, a bottle of boutique gin in one hand and her phone in the other. Her lips parted, but no sound emerged. "Where is Cassian?" I inquired, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. She moved aside slowly, utterly stunned. "Darian, what are you doing here?" "What do you imagine?" I retorted, placing my bag on the coffee table. "I read everything. I listened to the voice message. The one where you dismissed me as weak." Her eyes widened further. You invaded my privacy?" "Oh, now you care about privacy?" I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Tell me, Desiree, what exactly was your grand scheme? To sleep with him and then return to me? Or were you secretly hoping he'd fall for you and rescue you from the life you so desperately regret?" "I didn't think you'd actually—" She trailed off, then sighed. "I didn't think you'd find out. But you were going to do it anyway." She offered no denial. She simply stared at the carpet, like a child caught cheating on a crucial exam. I retrieved the recorder from my bag and pressed play. Her voice filled the room, slightly distorted, but unmistakably clear. "Darian never asserts himself. I could shed tears for 10 seconds and he'd be apologizing." She winced, physically recoiling. I paused it. "Still believe that?" "No," she whispered quickly, tears now glistening in her eyes. "Darian, I didn't mean it like that. I was just venting. You meant to hurt me, and you did. And you were going to go through with it. You were going to lie to my face and walk into this room with someone else." She collapsed onto the edge of the bed, silent. "You had 2 clear choices," I reminded her, my voice devoid of emotion. "And you chose a third. Betrayal." "I didn't sleep with him," she whispered. "But you were going to." She nodded slowly. Yes. I walked to the door and opened it wide. Then we are concluded here. She bolted upright, panic flashing in her eyes. Wait, Darian, please. We can salvage this. I already salvaged it, I said without looking back. Just not in the way you anticipated. With that, I stepped out, leaving the door ajar, like the shattered remnants of the trust she had demolished. I had imagined walking away would be the definitive end, a cinematic moment where I'd stride into the hallway, leaving her in a pool of regret, and the credits would roll on our marriage. But life rarely unfolds with such dramatic finality. Regret doesn't strike all at once. It creeps in slowly, after the adrenaline recedes, after the profound silence settles. And hers came knocking precisely 23 hours later. She appeared at my sister's townhouse where I was temporarily staying, looking as though she hadn't slept in days. No makeup, no coat, just standing there with swollen, red-rimmed eyes, clutching that familiar leather planner to her chest like a shield. "Can we speak?" she asked softly. My sister Ilara was in the kitchen. She glanced at me, a silent question in her eyes. Should I stay or vanish? I nodded toward the hallway. She slipped away without a sound. Desiree stepped inside, standing awkwardly, as if the very floor beneath her feet was poised to crumble. "I know I don't deserve to speak," she began, her voice barely a whisper. "But I need to tell you something. Not to repair this. I know I've shattered everything. But because you deserve the complete narrative." I folded my arms, uncertain if I even wanted to hear it. Every fiber of my being screamed to slam the door shut. But I let her speak. I needed to understand just how profoundly deep the damage extended. She remained standing in the entryway, rambling through ragged breaths. Cassian wasn't some long-planned dalliance. I didn't meet him and instantly fall into a spiral of lust. It was foolish, impulsive, and odd, truly odd. "I didn't even know his surname until a week ago," she continued. "We began conversing after our pottery class. He complimented my ceramic earrings. That's it. One single compliment, and I began to unravel. It wasn't him, Darian. It was me. I felt so invisible for such a long time. Not because of you, but because of myself. It's like my body is changing. My life is on autopilot, and I needed something." I raised an eyebrow. "So you decided to unilaterally rewrite the fundamental rules of our marriage for a dose of validation?" "No," she cried, shaking her head vigorously. "I was going to back out, I swear. When you presented those two choices, I realized I didn't want either. I wanted to tell you the truth, but I simply didn't know how." "You literally inscribed a lie into your planner." She flinched. "I know. I panicked. I didn't know if I could ever recover from this. I never expected you to show up at that room. I honestly thought I'd turn away at the door. I thought I'd feel sick. And I did feel sick when I saw you instead of him. But not because I was caught, because I finally comprehended what I was on the verge of losing." There it was again, that meticulously crafted narrative. Just enough contrition to appear genuine. Just enough spin to sound redemptive. I had heard that particular voice before. In therapy sessions she conveniently missed. In arguments she expertly derailed with a sudden flood of tears. But then she uttered something different, something that didn't fit her prepared script. "I never told you this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But 6 months ago I took a pregnancy test." That stopped me cold. She looked up at me, tears now freely streaming. "It was negative, but for 3 days I genuinely believed I was pregnant. And I didn't tell you because I was terrified. Not of the baby itself, but of how small I felt, how utterly unprepared I was to be responsible for anything else." My chest tightened painfully. We had discussed children before, lightly, a vague, someday concept. But this wasn't about someday. This was about the chilling fact that for 3 days she harbored a secret that could have irrevocably altered everything. And instead of turning towards me, she turned outward, into chaos, into someone else's arms, into a fantasy where consequences simply didn't exist. Which hurt more, the affair that almost happened, or the entire life she completely shut me out of? "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," she said, her voice cracking. "I just needed you to understand that it wasn't about Cassian. It was about me falling apart, and not possessing the courage to articulate it. For once, there were no defenses, no anger stirring within me, just profound silence. A deep, aching silence. She left without asking to stay. But what she didn't know was that someone else had just entered the picture, and they possessed information that would flip everything upside down. 2 days passed. I didn't call her. She didn't reappear. The silence should have been peaceful, like finally stepping out of a relentless storm. But it wasn't. It felt profoundly unfinished, like a chapter I was forbidden to close. I kept replaying her words, agonizing over whether she had truly been honest or merely attempting to mitigate the fallout. I detested that I still cared. I despised the part of me that desperately wanted to believe her, but I couldn't trust my own judgment anymore. Not after everything. Then came the message. It was from an unknown number, just a few carefully chosen words. If you are Darian, we need to speak. It concerns Desiree. Please. My immediate instinct was to dismiss it. Trolls, spam, another layer of drama I didn't need. But something felt different. The tone wasn't aggressive. It was cautious, deliberate. And after the emotional gauntlet I had just run, I figured I had absolutely nothing left to lose. I replied, "Who is this?" The response was instantaneous. "My name is Serafina. I am Cassian's ex-partner." My heart lurched. Cassian. That. Cassian. The one Desiree claimed to barely know. The one whose name I'd only encountered embedded in emoji-laden messages. I stared at the screen, adrenaline surging through me all over again. Before I could compose a response, another message arrived. I hesitated for a long time about getting involved. But after what Desiree told him, I believe you truly deserve to know the full, unvarnished truth. We agreed to meet at a quiet, unpretentious urban garden cafe across town. Neutral territory. I told no one where I was going. I had no desire to explain why I was pursuing answers from the ghost of a man I had never actually met. When I arrived, she was already seated, young, perhaps early 30s, dressed in simple workout attire. No makeup, her dark, wavy hair pulled back as if she, too, hadn't slept. "You must be Darian," she said, offering a hesitant smile. I nodded, unsure of what bombshell was about to drop. "I debated contacting you for a very long time," she began, her voice steady. "But Cassian, he's far from innocent in this. And I believe Desiree was playing a much deeper game, one neither of you fully comprehended." I remained silent, simply waiting. "She told Cassian you were abusive," she stated bluntly. My breath hitched. "What?" "She claimed you were controlling, cold, emotionally manipulative, that she desperately needed a safe escape, that he would be doing her a monumental favor." My mouth went utterly dry. All I could do was shake my head in disbelief. I wasn't perfect, but I had never, not once, laid a hand on Desiree. Never even raised my voice in a manner that could be construed as threatening. If anything, I had spent the majority of our marriage tiptoeing around her unpredictable moods. "She meticulously painted herself as a victim," Serafina continued, "and Cassian, he falls for that narrative again and again. I've witnessed him do it repeatedly, but this time something felt profoundly off. And then he showed me the message from you. The one you supposedly sent when you found out." I frowned. I never messaged him. She retrieved her phone, showed me a screenshot, and there it was. A lengthy, vitriolic message from Darian, seething with threats and rage. But it wasn't from my number. "She faked it," I whispered, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. Serafina nodded. "She created a burner account, sent it to Cassian to portray you as dangerous, to justify absolutely everything. He even asked her if she wanted to file a police report. She said no, said you were just emotional, but I knew it didn't add up, so I started digging." She slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were printed screenshots, meticulously detailed dates, timelines, photographs. One clearly showed Desiree and Cassian together outside a dimly lit bar, 2 weeks before she ever made her brazen request for a night with him. Another revealed a receipt from the Sterling Grand, dated 3 days before she claimed to have made the booking. They had been planning this for far longer than she admitted. She had lied, not just about her intentions, but about the very nature of what had transpired. She had manipulated both of us, used Cassian's misguided sympathy, used my quiet nature. She had spun a web so intricate she had ultimately trapped herself within its confines. "I'm not here to incite your hatred," Serafina said quietly, her voice tinged with a weary understanding. "I just felt you deserved the genuine story," before she could twist it yet again. I thanked her, though the words felt hollow and inadequate. I left the cafe clutching the envelope as if it were a ticking bomb, and in many ways it was. That night, Desiree texted me again. Just 3 simple words. "Can we talk?" This time I replied, "Certainly, but I doubt you'll appreciate the venue." Because I had one more surprise waiting for her, and it certainly wasn't at home. She arrived precisely 10 minutes late. I was already seated when she stepped into the small, sterile conference room I'd rented in a downtown co-working building. Nothing ostentatious, just 4 utilitarian chairs, a laminate table, and the kind of bland beige walls that induce a subtle discomfort in everyone. She paused in the doorway when she saw me, clutching her designer purse as if it could shield her from the inevitable. She was dressed meticulously, almost too meticulously. Her makeup perfectly applied, her auburn hair straightened to a glossy sheen, wearing that deep emerald blouse I used to compliment constantly. I almost chuckled. It was her performance armor. "Why here?" she asked softly, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't answer immediately. I simply gestured toward the chair opposite mine. She sat. Her eyes nervously scanned the room, as if she expected someone else to be lurking in a shadowy corner. She had no idea how accurate that intuition was. I placed the manila envelope deliberately on the table between us. Her eyes flickered to it, then quickly darted away. "I met someone," I stated calmly. "Her name is Serafina." That commanded her full attention. She stiffened visibly, her lips parting slightly. I don't know a Serafina." "You don't, but Cassian certainly does," I replied, my voice even. "And she knew enough to show me everything you strategically withheld." A flicker of undeniable panic crossed her face, but she quickly attempted to mask it behind a practiced facade of confusion. "What are you implying?" I slid the envelope toward her. "Your text messages, the fraudulent message you sent to Cassian, impersonating me, the hotel receipt from the week before, your little request at dinner, the photographs, the precise timeline. Do you wish to continue this charade, or shall we simply skip ahead to the undeniable truth?" She stared at the folder, but made no move to touch it. Her hands were now trembling perceptibly. "Darian, I don't know what she's told you, but you have to understand. Cassian isn't well. He twists things." "She didn't say a single word that mattered," I clarified. "Your own messages did all the talking." Her mouth opened, then closed again. For the first time in this entire agonizing ordeal, she had no pre-prepared lie. "I offered you 2 unambiguous choices," I articulated slowly. "You chose to brazenly disregard both. You staged your betrayal like some enlightened philosophical experiment. You meticulously planned it with someone you barely knew, lied to him that I was abusive, fabricated me as some monster so you could rationalize your intentions, and then you lied to my face repeatedly without remorse. But here's the profound realization I've had. None of this was ever about Cassian, not truly. He was merely a character you cast in your elaborate drama. This was always about control, about seeing just how far you could push before I finally pushed back." "I was terrified," she whispered, her voice fragile. "I felt like I was vanishing." "So you decided to make me vanish first." The door opened quietly behind her. She turned around bewildered as my sister Alara stepped into the room. Desiree's eyes widened dramatically. "What is she doing here?" "She's here to witness what I'm about to say," I responded, my gaze unwavering. "Because I am utterly done having these critical conversations in secrecy. I am done being the quiet one. I need someone else to hear the words I am finally, unequivocally saying out loud." Desiree stood defensively now. "This is humiliating." "No," I corrected calmly. "This is accountability." I produced a single sheet of paper, not a lawyer's summons, not divorce papers, but a simple written statement detailing everything she had done, signed by me, time-stamped, dated, a meticulous record of the truth. Because I knew with absolute certainty that one day she would attempt to twist this narrative again. She would recount a version to friends, family, future partners that cast her as the misunderstood heroine. I was ensuring that the truth existed immutably in ink. "I want absolutely nothing from you," I said, my voice resonating with a newfound authority. "No apology, no explanation. You have already said more than enough. This is closure. Mine, not yours." Desiree didn't speak again. She walked out with her head bowed. And this time I didn't follow. I didn't wait for tears or fresh excuses or empty promises. I let the profound silence follow her, and for the first time in an immeasurable span of time, it felt like genuine peace. But just when I believed the chapter was irrevocably closed, a knock came on my door that very same evening. And what I saw when I opened it, it changed absolutely everything again. I wasn't expecting any visitors that evening. The day had been too saturated with tension, with raw reckoning, with words that could never be unsaid. I was mentally, utterly exhausted. My phone was powered off. I was halfway through folding the laundry I'd neglected all week when the knock came. 3 quiet taps, not the doorbell, just deliberate. I opened the door slowly, uncertain of what I was bracing myself for. It wasn't Desiree, it was Serafina. She stood there, a small, uncertain smile playing on her lips, a slim folder clutched in her hand. "I know this might seem odd," she began, "but there's one more thing you absolutely need to see." I stepped aside and allowed her entry, not because I craved more drama, but because, for once, she had been the solitary person who offered me undeniable clarity. She settled at my kitchen table and slid the folder across to me. "This," she said, her voice low and serious, "is a restraining order Cassian filed against his previous girlfriend 2 years ago. The pattern is strikingly similar. Emotional manipulation, deliberate half-truths, cultivated chaos. I'm telling you this because you need to stop burdening yourself with the belief that any of this was your fault. Desiree didn't just simply slip. She learned how to lie, how to manipulate, from someone who systematically constructs relationships upon false narratives." I read through the documents slowly, meticulously, a chilling realization dawning on me. I understood how deeply I had allowed myself to drown in guilt over something I had never, could never have caused. I had relentlessly blamed myself, thinking that if I had been more exciting, more attentive, more spontaneous, she wouldn't have strayed. But this wasn't about excitement. It was about profound, calculated deception. And I finally saw it for what it truly was. When Serafina rose to leave, she paused at the threshold. "You are not weak, Darian," she stated, her gaze meeting mine with unwavering sincerity. "You are simply someone who offered love honestly. That is not a weakness. That is an incredibly rare and powerful strength." I didn't respond, but those words resonated deep within me, long after she was gone. It has been 4 months since that transformative night. Desiree relocated out of state. We finalized the divorce quietly, without bitter court battles or sensational headlines, just 2 signatures on paper and a final, hollow handshake. She didn't contend for anything. I believe a part of her understood she didn't deserve to. I've since moved into a new place, smaller, simpler, filled with a quiet calm. Jasper now sleeps peacefully beside my bed. I take him on long walks without feeling the need to explain my destination. I'm learning how to truly live without constantly anticipating the next emotional landmine. And honestly, that kind of profound peace is louder than any apology. I am not consumed by bitterness. I am not consumed by anger. I am simply profoundly free. If you are reading this, and you have ever been made to feel like your love was somehow insufficient, let me tell you something vital. Love is never the inherent problem. The individual who treats it like a disposable commodity, that is the problem. And you absolutely do not have to carry their shame for another moment.